All right, so first unit we're going to look at this semester is ecology. Anybody know what that word means?
The study of environment.
No, that's economics. Ology, study of. Eco, you talk about science. Yeah. Everything that works together, interacts together in a certain environment. Okay. So if we go backwards in time, we look at stuff you've already talked about. Levels of organization. What's the smallest thing? The atom. Atom is the smallest particle of matter. We've talked about molecules a little bit at the beginning. We've talked about organelles. Then you put those together, it makes a cell. Put cells together, it makes tissues, makes organs, makes organ systems, which we'll talk about later this semester. You put a bunch of organ systems together, what do you get? Yeah, you get an organism. One single organism. Okay? That one single organism, one individual, is just one piece of a very large puzzle. Okay? So we start with the individual. When we have a whole bunch of those together, we have a population. All right? There's a population of humans in this room. Are we all exactly the same? No, but are we the same? We are the same species. Okay? Whether we look different, act different, doesn't matter. We're the same species. We are a population. Okay? When we add other things to it, other organisms, not just humans, we have a community. So when you look around outside, you got trees, you got grass, you got different types of bugs, you got birds, you got animals, all different types. All those things living in a certain area is called a community. Okay. The next step up is an ecosystem. Ecosystem takes all of the community plus everything else that surrounds it. All right? Is there only living things on this planet? No. Is there only living things here in the woodlands? No, there are other things here. You know, there's rocks, there's dirt, there's buildings, there's sidewalks, all that stuff is part of this area. Does it affect the area? Yeah. All right, so anything that has an effect is part of that ecosystem, whether it's living or non-living. You take a larger chunk of several ecosystems, and we call that a biome. We have several major biomes on this planet. Desert would be considered a biome. Is there just one specific community in a large desert? No, there's a whole bunch of them. Okay? And then the entire thing, the biosphere. All right? The part of this planet where life exists. Where on this planet does life not exist? It's not on this planet. Think about the word. What's a sphere?
Endosphere.
A sphere, go back to geometry, which you'll get to. A three-dimensional what? Circle. What's this planet? A sphere. What does bio mean? Life. All right? Life on the big round ball. Okay? Now, we said up here in the ecosystem it was all living and non-living. We have words for those. If it's a living thing, it's called a biotic factor. That prefix bio, life, living thing. So if we're looking at this picture here, we have plants, we got trees, we got grasses in the water, things growing in there. We have animals, there's fish and birds and some other animals that live here. In that water, we also have different types of fungi. All right. There's also bacteria. There's bacteria everywhere. Okay. All those are biotic factors. You can throw humans in there. We are a biotic factor. Okay. Factor meaning something that affects that portion of the planet. Something that affects, that is living. Okay? The opposite of that is called abiotic. When you put that A in front of it, it means not living. Right? In this picture, what are some examples of not living things? Rocks can be non-living. What else? What's in that picture? There's a lot of one thing in that picture. Water. Water is non-living. All right. And then what every living thing has to have, some form of energy. What energy is in that picture? All right. So we have moisture, water, temperature. Does temperature affect living things? Does it affect non-living things? It can. All right. Wind, sunlight. All right. Someone said rocks. That fits too. All right. Soil. There's soil underneath that water. There's got to be soil with them. This tree is growing. All right. So we have several different things that are not living factors. Do they affect life there? Does that water affect life? Yeah. If there's too much of it, what happens to life? You know, it will thin the herd. Okay? It'll take some things out. Temperature gets too high, what happens to that water? It evaporates. What happens to the fish and other things living in that water? They have less room. And we have competition. Things happen. And we'll get to that coming up. So all of these things work together to make that ecosystem what it is. All right. Changing one thing can affect everything. All right. You change one thing in an ecosystem, whether it's non-living or living, it affects everything. All right. Biodiversity is a good thing. Having a variety of living things in an ecosystem. Why would you need biodiversity? And you got to think past human. You got to think animal kingdom, things like that. Why would we need biodiversity? What? Food. Period. All right. You take several organisms out of an environment. What happens to the food sources for other animals? It changes it.
Because they're all these animals are
All right. What?
Well, because if we didn't have biodiversity, there would be almost no surviving species after disasters.
Eventually things would die out and you would have less and less and less. All right. Think about grass. Just grass. How many organisms use grass as a food source? If you take grass out of a certain ecosystem, what happens? We will get to in the next unit a key phrase, adapt or die. Okay? Those organisms have to adapt and find a different food source or cease to exist. Okay? Most biodiverse place on the planet is a rainforest. There are millions of different species of organisms that live and call the rainforest home. All right? We are not one that should be living there. That should be there. Do humans have a place in the rainforest? No. But we tend to go there and screw things up. That's what we do. We're human. Okay? Was the woodlands always like it is now? No. I remember when I was in school, majority of this stuff wasn't here. This school wasn't here. The Woodlands High School wasn't here. The mall wasn't here. All of this was trees and forest land and grassland.
You were born?
What happens to the organisms when we put all this stuff in? They die or they move. Does that affect this ecosystem?
They go good, mother.
Building all this stuff, man-made stuff, affects this one, but what does it do to the ecosystems around here?
Destroys them.
Not destroy. All those organisms that used to live here now go where?
To the other.
They go the other one. Does that affect the other one? Yeah, because now you got more competition. You got more organisms in the same place.
Is it like all the iguanas on board them?
Well, we'll get to why that's happened at the end of this. Okay.
Florida, man.
All right, there is one species in each ecosystem, one species that has the majority of the hold on that ecosystem. Means they have a large effect on what happens there. And if they're removed, that ecosystem will fall apart. We call that a keystone species. And where that word comes from, and it's way back when, they used to build archways for houses, for gateways, things like that. The center stone at the very top is called the keystone. If you remove that stone, that archway will not stand. All right? It will crumble. That one stone. You can break some of these other stones, it'll still stand. But if you break or remove that single stone in the middle, that archway will not stand. Same thing with the ecosystem. You remove this one species, and that ecosystem is going to fall apart. All right? Go back to if you have a lot of organisms that eat grass, and you have something happen, a big fire burns everything off, grass is gone. You remove that one large effect organism, that grass, what happens to all those other species? They adapt, die, or move. Okay? It affects the whole ecosystem.
Aren't they usually like the same thing in the most? They usually like a plant.
Not necessarily, but plants is where things start. And you'll see that's where we start and build up to. Even for us. You take plants out of our ecosystem, wherever we live, does it affect us?
Yeah.
It does. Maybe not directly, but what things do you like to eat? Yeah, animals usually eat what? Plants. Which, and you follow it all the way back. Every food chain is going to start with a plant. Okay? It does affect you, if not directly, indirectly. And that's what the next thing talks about. Life has to start with a energy source. What's the main energy source? The sun. All right, main energy source is the sun. Who uses that energy? Plants. We call those producers. All right. You go into the grocery store and you go to the produce section. What's there?
Produce.
Plants. Fruits and vegetables. Plants. All right. Producers make their own food. They don't have to have anybody else. We've talked about that before because we've talked about photosynthesis. Taking that sun energy and turning it into chemical energy. It'd be nice if we could do that, but we can't. All right. We also have chemosynthesis. All right. Many of our bacteria use chemicals to make energy. That's why it's so hard to kill bacteria, because they can pretty much live on anything. We call that chemosynthesis. Making energy out of chemicals. Another word for producers, autotrophs. Automatic, means they always have energy. They don't have to rely on something else for their food because they make it themselves. Plants make sugar from sunlight. That's what they need to survive. Got it? All right, so the flip side of that, that's producers. Consumers. What's it mean to consume? To consume means to take in. Okay? You consume food. That means you have to rely on something else for your energy. All right? If you have no food, are you going to survive? Not very long. You can survive for a little bit, but not long. You're a consumer. We call those heterotrophs. They have to have something else make the energy for them. Okay? And we have different levels. Herbivores. Everybody knows what a herbivore is. That first part of that word, herb. Herb is a type of plant. So herbivores eat plants. Carnivores, not meat. Can't say meat. And the reason why you can't say meat is because when you take the bark off a tree, what's the center of the column? The meat of the tree. You gotta say carnivores eat animals. Alright. Omnivores eat both. What are you? Human species is an omnivore. We can eat plants and animal. Detrivores. Detrivores eat dead things. What's an example of one of these? Vulture, buzzards, they're detrivores. They eat dead things. Right? Bacteria, fungus are all detrivores. They eat dead things. Right? Anything that'll decompose is a detrivore. But then we have decomposers. Decomposers don't actually eat the dead matter. They simply break it down into other things. Okay? You have, for instance, maggots that eat dead matter. They don't actually eat it. They turn it into something else that they release back into the earth. Okay? And then we have specialists. Specialists primarily eat one thing, but then they can eat some other things. Okay? Now, is it good being a specialist?
No.
Why not?
Only rely on one food source.
Yeah, because if that one food source goes away, what happens to you? You die. Okay?
Wait, what's a generalist?
Generalists having a varying diet mean they can eat anything.
Let's take an example of goat.
That's a good example of goat. A goat will eat anything. It'll eat grass. It'll eat dead organisms. It'll eat meat. It'll eat bark off a tree. It'll eat just about anything. Ever seen a place where they have a bunch of goats? Is there anything there? No, it's dirt. Because they eat everything. They'll even eat the dirt. They'll eat their own poop. Hogs do the same thing. Hogs eat everything. They'll eat something that's dead. They'll eat grass. They'll eat meat. They'll eat plants. They'll eat dirt. They eat their own poop. They'll eat each other. If one of them dies, the rest of them will eat it. That's a hog. All right? That's a generalist. They don't care. They just want food. All right? Make sense? All right, we're going to use all these words tomorrow